The sound of children's laughter filled the Carter family's backyard on that perfect August Saturday afternoon. Sarah Carter stood at the grill, flipping burgers, while keeping one eye on the four children playing tag near the wooden swing set. The smell of charcoal and barbecue sauce hung heavy in the humid Tennessee air. Her husband David was inside grabbing more drinks, and her sister Michelle was setting out potato salad on the picnic table decorated with red checkered tablecloths. Everything was perfect, too perfect. Sarah counted the children as she always did, a habit formed from years of motherhood and underlying anxiety. 1, 2, 3, she counted again. 1, 2, 3. Her heart skipped a beat. Where was Emma? Michelle, where's Emma? Sarah called out, trying to keep her voice calm, telling herself not to panic yet. Maybe Emma had gone inside to use the bathroom. Maybe she was hiding behind the shed playing one of her silly games. Michelle looked up from arranging plastic cups, her face immediately showing concern. She was just here, Sarah, right by the swing set with the other kids. Sarah dropped the spatula onto the grill and started walking quickly toward the play area. Emma, honey, where are you? Her voice was louder now, cutting through the children's laughter. The three other kids, her nephew Jake and two neighbor children, stopped playing and looked at her with wide eyes. Where's Emma? Sarah asked them directly, bending down to their level. 7-year-old Jake shrugged. She was here. She said she wanted to catch a butterfly. Butterfly. The word hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Behind their property, beyond the white picket fence that David had been meaning to reinforce for months, lay an endless expanse of dense Tennessee woodland. 200 acres of thick forest, steep ravines, abandoned wells, and wildlife. Emma loved butterflies. She chased them constantly. David! Sarah's scream brought her husband running from the house, drink still in his hands. He saw his wife's face and immediately dropped the bottles. They shattered on the concrete patio, but no one noticed. Emma's gone, Sarah said, her voice breaking. She's not in the yard. What happened next was a blur of organized chaos. David sprinted through the house, checking every room, every closet, under every bed, behind every door. He tore through the garage, looked in the cars, checked the front yard. Nothing. Michelle called 911 while simultaneously gathering the other children, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. Sarah ran to the back fence, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. There in the soft dirt near the fence line she saw them, tiny footprints, child-sized footprints, leading into the woods. No, 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 no. Sarah tried to climb the fence, but David caught her, pulling her back even as she fought against him. Sarah, stop. We can't go in there unprepared. We need help. The police are coming, David said, his own voice thick with terror. He held his wife as she collapsed against him, sobbing. The next 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Word spread fast in their small community of Greenfield, Tennessee. Within 15 minutes, there were 30 people in the Carter yard. Someone brought flashlights. Someone else brought bottled water. Old Mr. Henderson from 3 houses down arrived with his hunting dogs, though they weren't trained for search and rescue. Sarah stood frozen by the fence, staring into the darkening woods, calling Emma's name until her voice went hoarse. The sun was sinking lower now, casting long shadows that turned the forest into something menacing. She checked her watch obsessively. Emma had been missing for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. The first police car arrived with sirens wailing, followed quickly by 2 more. Officers began organizing the growing crowd into search parties, establishing a command center on the Carter's driveway. Someone set up floodlights. The local fire department arrived. Sarah watched it all as if from underwater, her mind screaming one thought over and over. My baby is out there alone in the dark. A female officer approached Sarah gently, asking questions. What was Emma wearing? Pink dress with butterflies. How old? 3 years, 4 months. Any medical conditions? No, afraid of anything, the dark. Yes, Emma was terrified of the dark. Sarah's legs gave out at that thought. Michelle caught her and lowered her into a lawn chair. The sun was setting now, the sky streaked with orange and purple, beautiful if it weren't so horrifying. In an hour, maybe less, those woods would be pitch black. "Mrs. Carter," a voice said. Sarah looked up to see a tall police officer with kind eyes standing before her. "I'm Officer Jake Morrison, and this is Rex." Beside him sat the largest German shepherd Sarah had ever seen. The dog's brown eyes were intelligent and alert, his posture noble and confident. "Rex is trained in search and rescue. He's found 12 missing persons. We're going to find your daughter," Morrison said with a certainty that made Sarah want to believe him. Morrison knelt beside Emma's bed inside the house, letting Rex sniff Emma's purple blanket, the one she'd been carrying earlier that day. The dog inhaled deeply, his nose working overtime, processing scents that humans couldn't begin to detect. When Rex lifted his head, he looked directly at Morrison and barked once, sharp and purposeful. "He's got her scent," Morrison said. Outside, Rex pulled toward the fence with urgent purpose, his nose to the ground. Morrison grabbed his high-powered flashlight and checked his radio. "We're going in," he announced to the command center. Sarah watched Officer Morrison and Rex disappear into the tree line, the beam of the flashlight growing smaller and smaller until it was swallowed completely by the darkness. She sank to her knees in the grass and prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. Somewhere in those vast, dark woods, her 3-year-old daughter was alone and terrified. And the clock was ticking. The forest swallowed Officer Jake Morrison and Rex whole the moment they crossed the fence line. What had looked like a simple stretch of woods from the Carters' backyard transformed into something far more sinister up close. Morrison's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a maze of thick underbrush, twisted vines, and trees so dense their canopy blocked out even the fatting twilight. Rex moved with absolute focus, his nose skimming inches above the ground, occasionally lifting to catch air scents. His powerful shoulders pushed through the brambles that tore at Morrison's uniform. The German shepherd had done this dozens of times before, but Morrison knew every search was different. Every second counted, especially with a 3-year-old. "Good boy, Rex. Find Emma. Find the girl," Morrison encouraged, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. His radio crackled with updates from the other search teams fanning out across the woods. Nothing yet. All negative reports. They'd been searching for 45 minutes now, covering rough terrain that became increasingly treacherous. Morrison's boots slipped on damp leaves and exposed roots. He caught himself on a tree trunk, cursing under his breath. If this was difficult for a grown man with proper equipment, what had it been like for a tiny 3-year-old girl in a dress and sandals? The temperature was dropping fast. Morrison checked his watch, 7:47 p.m. It had been over 2 hours since Emma disappeared. His military training in Afghanistan had taught him about the golden hours in search and rescue. The first 3 hours were critical. After that, statistics became grim, especially with children. Rex suddenly veered left, pulling hard on the lead. Morrison trusted his partner completely. The dog's nose was capable of detecting scents diluted to 1 or 2 parts per trillion. If Emma had come this way, Rex would find her trail. They pushed deeper into the woods, moving away from the voices of other searchers. Morrison's radio squawked again. "K9 unit, what's your position?" The dispatcher's voice crackled with static. Morrison checked his GPS unit. "About half a mile northeast of the property line. Rex has a strong track." "Copy that. Be advised, we've got a storm system moving in. Lightning detected 15 miles out." Perfect, Morrison thought grimly. Just what they needed. A 3-year-old lost in the woods and now a potential thunderstorm approaching. Rain would wash away scent trails, making Rex's job nearly impossible. They pressed on. The beam of Morrison's flashlight caught glimpses of the forest's hidden dangers, a rotted log concealing a deep hole, thorny bushes that could shred skin, poison ivy climbing up tree trunks. Emma could be injured. She could have fallen. She could be unconscious. Morrison pushed those thoughts away. Stay focused. Trust Rex. The dog stopped suddenly at the edge of a steep ravine. Morrison's stomach dropped. The embankment fell away sharply, disappearing into darkness below. He shined his flashlight down, seeing rocks and thick brush about 20 feet down. Rex whined, his ears forward, body tense. "Did she go down there, boy?" Morrison asked, his heart pounding. He radioed in their position and the terrain challenge. If Emma had fallen down this ravine. Rex barked once, then began carefully picking his way down the slope, his claws digging into the dirt for purchase. Morrison had no choice but to follow. He grabbed onto exposed roots and small trees, half climbing, half sliding down the embankment. Dirt and pebbles cascaded around him. His radio slipped from his belt and tumbled down ahead of him, lost in the darkness. "Damn it," Morrison muttered. No radio meant no communication with the command center. He and Rex were on their own now. At the bottom of the ravine, the terrain leveled out slightly, but the underbrush was even thicker here. Morrison's flashlight was running low on battery. He could see the beam weakening. He had a backup in his pack, but switching them out would take precious seconds. Rex moved forward urgently now, his tail straight, his entire body language screaming that they were close. Morrison's heart rate accelerated. "Find her, Rex. Good boy, find Emma." They pushed through a particularly dense thicket of brambles. Morrison felt thorns tear through his uniform sleeves, felt blood trickling down his arms. His face was scratched and bleeding. None of it mattered. They were close. He could feel it. Rex stopped abruptly and lifted his head, sniffing the air. Then he barked 3 sharp, rapid barks, the signal he'd found something. Morrison's flashlight beam swept across the area wildly. Trees, bushes, rocks, more trees, and then he saw it. A flash of pink. His light steadied on the spot. There, huddled against the base of a massive oak tree, was Emma Carter. "Emma," Morrison called out, moving forward quickly. Relief flooded through him. She was alive. They'd found her. But as his light fully illuminated the little girl, Morrison's relief turned to concern. Emma was in bad shape. Her pink butterfly dress was torn and filthy, covered in mud and leaves. Her arms and legs were covered in scratches and scrapes, some bleeding. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. She was shivering violently in the cool night air. But worse than her physical condition was the look in her eyes, pure terror. When Morrison's flashlight hit her face, Emma's eyes went wide with fear. She screamed, a sound that pierced through the forest and straight into Morrison's heart. It was the scream of a child who had been alone in the dark for hours, who had been lost and terrified, and who now saw a large stranger approaching with a bright light and a massive dog. "Emma, sweetheart, it's okay. I'm here to help you. Your mommy and daddy sent me," Morrison said softly, crouching down to make himself less threatening. He kept his distance, not wanting to scare her more. But Emma screamed again, pressing herself harder against the tree trunk. Her small body was shaking uncontrollably. "No, go away," she shrieked, her voice hoarse and desperate. Rex whined beside Morrison, sensing the child's distress. The dog sat down, looking between Morrison and Emma uncertainly. Morrison's mind raced. He'd found her but now faced an unexpected problem. Emma was too terrified to let him approach. If he tried to grab her forcefully, she might run deeper into the woods or, worse, fall and hurt herself. He needed to calm her down first. "Emma, look, I brought you a friend. This is Rex. He's a nice dog," Morrison tried, keeping his voice gentle and non-threatening. But Emma only screamed louder, hyperventilating now. "Scary, too big, go away." Morrison extended his hand slowly. "Sweetheart, please. We need to get you home to Mommy." "No," Emma shrieked, and Morrison saw her small body tense as if preparing to bolt. He froze. This was a critical moment. One wrong move and this rescue could turn into a disaster. They were deep in the woods, he had no radio, his flashlight was dying, and the child he'd found wouldn't let him near her. Morrison looked at Rex, then back at Emma. Time was running out, and he had no idea how to bridge the gap between this terrified little girl and safety. Officer Jake Morrison had faced armed suspects, hostile crowds, and life-threatening situations during his 8 years on the force and 4 years in the Marines before that. But nothing had prepared him for the helplessness he felt crouched in the dark woods, 20 feet from a terrified 3-year-old who needed him desperately, but was too scared to accept his help. Emma continued to sob against the tree, her small chest heaving with each breath. Morrison could see her shivering intensely, her lips taking on a bluish tint in the beam of his dying flashlight. Hypothermia was setting in. They were running out of time. "Emma, please, honey, I promise I'm not going to hurt you," Morrison tried again, his voice as soft and gentle as he could make it. "Your mommy is waiting for you. She misses you so much." At the mention of her mother, Emma's crying intensified. "Mommy," she wailed, the sound absolutely heartbreaking. "I want Mommy." "I know, sweetheart. I can take you to Mommy. But you have to let me help you," Morrison said, inching forward just slightly. "No, stay away," Emma screamed, pressing herself so hard against the tree that Morrison worried she might hurt herself. Her eyes were wild, darting between Morrison and Rex, seeing them not as rescuers but as threats in the darkness that had already traumatized her for hours. Morrison stopped moving and sat back on his heels, thinking rapidly. His training had covered many scenarios, but not this. He couldn't force her. That would traumatize her further and might cause her to run. He couldn't leave her here while he went for backup. She could wander off and get even more lost. And he couldn't communicate with the command center without his radio. Rex whined beside him, a low, concerned sound. The German shepherd's eyes were fixed on Emma, his ears forward, his body language showing distress at the child's fear. Morrison had worked with Rex for 3 years. They'd developed an almost telepathic understanding, and right now, Rex was telling him something. Morrison looked at his partner, really looked at him. Rex was a powerful dog, intimidating to adults, let alone a frightened child. But Morrison had seen Rex be gentle with children dozens of times at community events. The dog had an uncanny ability to read people, to understand when someone needed comfort instead of authority. An idea formed in Morrison's mind. It was unorthodox, went against standard search and rescue protocol, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "Rex," Morrison said quietly, unclipping the lead from the dog's collar. "Easy, boy, gentle." Rex looked at Morrison, then back at Emma. The dog seemed to understand exactly what was needed. Slowly, deliberately, Rex lowered himself to the ground. Not sitting, but lying completely flat, making his large body as small and non-threatening as possible. Morrison held his breath as Rex began to move toward Emma. The dog didn't walk, he crawled, pulling himself forward on his belly like a soldier under barbed wire. His ears were back, his movements slow and careful, his tail still. Every aspect of his body language screamed, "I'm not a threat, I'm a friend." Emma's screaming stopped. She watched the approaching dog with wide, uncertain eyes, her back still pressed against the tree. Rex was now 10 feet away, then 8 feet, then 5 feet. Morrison remained motionless, afraid that any movement from him would break whatever spell was happening. His flashlight beam was growing weaker by the second, but he kept it trained on the scene unfolding before him. Rex stopped about 3 feet from Emma, close enough to reach, but not so close as to be threatening. The dog placed his large head on his paws and looked up at Emma with the gentlest expression Morrison had ever seen on a police dog. Rex's brown eyes were soft, patient, understanding. If a dog could communicate, "I'm here to help you," Rex was doing it. The forest went silent. Even the usual night sounds of insects and distant animals seemed to pause. Morrison could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Emma had stopped crying. She stared at Rex, her little chest still heaving with residual sobs, but her expression had changed from terror to curiosity. Seconds ticked by. Morrison didn't dare breathe too loudly. Then, in a voice so small and trembling it almost broke Morrison's heart, Emma spoke. "Good boy." 2 words, just 2 words, but they changed everything. Rex's tail moved. Not a full wag, just a small, gentle movement that acknowledged Emma's words. The dog remained in his submissive position, his eyes never leaving the little girl. Emma leaned slightly forward, her fear visibly diminishing. Her hand, tiny and covered in dirt and dried blood from scratches, extended slowly toward Rex. Morrison watched, barely breathing. This was it. This was the moment. "Good boy," Emma whispered again, her fingers now just inches from Rex's head. Rex waited patiently, not moving except for that gentle tail wag. And then Emma's hand made contact with his fur. She touched the top of his head, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. Her fingers tangled in the thick fur of Rex's neck. Something miraculous happened. Emma's face, which had been a mask of terror and exhaustion, softened. Her eyes, which had been wild with fear, began to focus. She ran her hand over Rex's head again and again, as if confirming he was real, as if drawing comfort from the simple act of touching another living being after hours of terrifying isolation. "Good boy," she said a third time, and this time there was something different in her voice. Not fear, but affection, trust. Rex, with the patience of a saint, remained perfectly still as Emma leaned closer. Then, in a movement that would replay in Morrison's mind for the rest of his life, Emma released her grip on the tree and crawled forward. She wrapped her small arms around Rex's thick neck and buried her face in his fur. The police dog, trained to pursue criminals and track fugitives, became a living teddy bear. Rex held absolutely still, letting the traumatized child cling to him, letting her cry into his fur, letting her find comfort in his warmth and presence. "Good boy, good boy, good boy," Emma murmured over and over like a mantra, like a prayer. Her tiny body was pressed against Rex's larger frame, and Morrison could see her shivering begin to slow as she absorbed the dog's body heat. Morrison seized the moment. He moved slowly, carefully, speaking in the softest voice he could manage. "Emma, sweetie, Rex wants to help you get home to Mommy. Would that be okay?" Emma didn't pull away from Rex, but she looked up at Morrison. Her eyes were still frightened, but the wild terror had been replaced with cautious wariness. She looked at Rex, then back at Morrison. "Doggy come too?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Morrison felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Yes, honey, Doggy comes too. Rex is going to help us get you home." "Promise?" Emma asked, her arms still wrapped around Rex's neck. "I promise," Morrison said, moving closer now, slowly extending his arms. "But we need to go now, sweetheart. Mommy is waiting." Emma looked at Rex again, as if asking the dog's permission. Rex, in response, slowly sat up, allowing Emma to maintain contact with him but also positioning himself to help Morrison. The dog was remarkable, Morrison thought. Absolutely remarkable. "Will you let me carry you, Emma? Rex will walk right beside us the whole time," Morrison asked. Emma hesitated, then slowly nodded. But as Morrison reached for her, she grabbed onto Rex's collar with one hand, refusing to let go. "Okay, honey. You can hold on to Rex. That's fine," Morrison said, carefully lifting Emma into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, her small body cold and trembling. She kept one hand twisted in Rex's collar, and Rex, understanding his role perfectly, pressed close to Morrison's leg as they began to move. Morrison grabbed his backup flashlight from his pack, the beam bright and strong. He oriented himself using his training and the GPS unit, plotting the quickest route back to the Carter property. It would be a difficult trek carrying Emma, but he'd do it. They'd found her. She was alive. And it was all because of 2 simple words from a frightened little girl to a gentle giant of a dog. "Good boy." Officer Jake Morrison adjusted Emma's weight in his arms, feeling her small body tremble against his chest. The 3-year-old kept one hand firmly twisted in Rex's collar, her knuckles white with the strength of her grip. Rex walked pressed against Morrison's leg, his body a steady, comforting presence for the frightened child. The dog seemed to understand that his job wasn't finished. He was now Emma's lifeline, her security blanket with fur and 4 legs. "We're going to see Mommy soon," Morrison said softly, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as they began the treacherous journey back. "Just hold on tight, sweetheart." Emma didn't respond with words, but Morrison felt her nod against his shoulder. She was exhausted, her adrenaline finally crashing now that she felt safe. But every few seconds, she would whisper "good boy" to Rex, as if reassuring herself that the dog was still there. The terrain was even more challenging carrying a child. Morrison's boots slipped on the damp leaves as he navigated around fallen logs and thick underbrush. His arms were already aching, but he barely noticed. All that mattered was getting Emma home. They reached the ravine he'd descended earlier, and Morrison's heart sank. Going down had been difficult. Going up while carrying a child would be nearly impossible. He looked at the steep embankment, trying to calculate the best approach. "Rex, stay," Morrison commanded, setting Emma down gently for just a moment. She immediately panicked, clutching at his uniform. "No, don't leave me, she cried, her voice rising to a scream. SHH, sweetie, I'm not leaving you. I promise. I just need to figure out how to get us up this hill," Morrison explained quickly, picking her back up. Emma's arms wrapped around his neck like a vice, her face buried in his shoulder. Morrison studied the ravine again. He'd need both hands to climb while carrying Emma. That meant Rex would have to manage on his own. "Rex, up," he commanded, pointing to the top of the embankment. The German Shepherd looked at Morrison, then at Emma, then back at Morrison. The dog whined, clearly unhappy about leaving the child's side even for a moment. "It's okay, boy, go up, we'll follow," Morrison urged. Rex hesitated another second, then began scrambling up the steep slope, his powerful legs propelling him upward. Emma watched with wide eyes, her grip on Morrison tightening. "Doggy," she whimpered. "He's going to wait for us at the top," Morrison assured her. "Now, Emma, I need you to hold onto my neck really, really tight. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, her small arms squeezing so hard Morrison could barely breathe. He began the climb, using his free hand to grab roots and small trees, his legs driving them upward. Dirt cascaded down around them. His boots slipped twice, his heart lurching each time, but he maintained his grip. Halfway up, Morrison's hand closed around a root that immediately gave way. He felt himself sliding backward, Emma screaming in his ear. His free hand shot out, desperately grabbing for anything. His fingers closed around a sapling, and he held on with everything he had, his muscles burning with the effort. It's okay, Morrison panted, more to himself than to Emma. Above them, Rex barked urgently, the sound echoing through the forest. "We're okay, boy, we're coming." With renewed determination, Morrison found new handholds and continued climbing. His lungs burned, his arms screamed in protest, but he pushed forward. Finally, his hand reached the top of the embankment. With one last burst of strength, he hauled himself and Emma over the edge. They lay there for a moment, Morrison gasping for breath. Rex immediately pressed against them, licking Emma's face. The little girl managed a weak giggle, the first happy sound Morrison had heard from her. Her hand found Rex's fur again, gripping it like she'd never let go. "Good boy," she whispered. "Good boy saved me." Morrison pulled himself to his feet, lifted Emma again, and they continued. He tried his radio once more, hoping they were close enough to get a signal, but it was dead, probably damaged in his fall down the ravine. They were still on their own. The forest seemed endless. Every tree looked the same in the darkness. Morrison checked his GPS unit repeatedly, making sure they were heading in the right direction, 20 more minutes. They could make it. Emma was growing heavier in his arms, her exhaustion complete. Her eyes kept drooping closed, then jerking open as if she was afraid that if she fell asleep, she'd wake up alone again. Each time her eyes opened, she'd look for Rex, and only when she saw the dog would she relax slightly. "Emma, can you tell me about your favorite toy?" Morrison asked, trying to keep her engaged and awake. Falling asleep in her condition could be dangerous. "Bunny," Emma mumbled. "Pink bunny, miss my bunny." "I bet your bunny misses you too," Morrison said. "And your mommy and daddy, they miss you so much. They're waiting for you." "Mommy cried," Emma said, her voice small and sad. "I heard Mommy crying. I tried to come back, but I was lost. Everything looked the same. I was scared." Morrison felt his chest tighten. "I know you were scared, sweetheart, but you were so brave. And now we found you and Rex is here and we're taking you home." "Rex is my friend," Emma stated, as if this was the most important fact in the world. Her hand was still tangled in the dog's collar. Rex continued his steady pace beside them, never faltering, never pulling away. Then in the distance Morrison saw lights, flashlight beams cutting through the trees, voices calling Emma's name. They were close, so close. "Over here," Morrison shouted, his voice booming through the forest. "I have Emma, we're coming in." The response was immediate, multiple voices shouting back, flashlight beams swinging toward them. Morrison could hear people crashing through the underbrush, running toward them. "Hear that, Emma? That's everyone coming to meet you. Your mommy and daddy are right there," Morrison said, his own voice thick with emotion. Emma lifted her head from his shoulder, listening. Then, faintly, carried on the night air, came a voice that made the little girl's entire body stiffen. "Emma, Emma, baby." It was Sarah Carter's voice, desperate and hopeful and terrified all at once. "Mommy," Emma screamed, suddenly animated, struggling in Morrison's arms. "Mommy, I'm here, Mommy." Morrison picked up his pace, Rex trotting faster beside him. The lights were getting closer, the voices louder. They broke through a thick patch of trees, and suddenly they were surrounded by searchers. Flashlight beams blinded Morrison momentarily, but he pushed forward. And then he saw her, Sarah Carter, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her eyes wild with hope and fear. Behind her was David Carter and what looked like half the town of Greenfield. But Morrison only had eyes for the mother who had spent the last 3 hours in absolute hell. "Emma," Sarah breathed, and then she was running. Emma was screaming, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy," over and over, reaching out with both arms, Morrison realized, because she'd finally released her death grip on Rex's collar. The reunion happened in a blur. Sarah Carter's scream of joy and relief pierced the night air, a sound so primal and pure that several of the searchers openly wept. She snatched Emma from Morrison's arms, falling to her knees and pulling her daughter against her chest. My baby, my baby, my baby," Sarah sobbed, rocking back and forth, her hands running over Emma's face, her arms, her legs, checking that she was real, that she was actually there. David Carter collapsed beside them, wrapping his arms around both his wife and daughter, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Emma clung to her mother with desperate strength, crying hard, but then suddenly she pulled back, her eyes searching frantically. "Doggy," she cried out. "Where's the doggy? Where's Rex?" Morrison stepped forward and Rex moved with him. The moment Emma saw the German shepherd, her face transformed. "Rex," she shouted, reaching for him even while in her mother's arms. Sarah Carter looked confused, her tear-filled eyes meeting Morrison's. "The dog?" she asked. "The dog saved her life," Morrison said simply. "She wouldn't let me near her, she was too scared, but Rex made her feel safe." Emma was half climbing out of her mother's arms, still reaching for Rex. Sarah, overwhelmed and not fully understanding but trusting her daughter's instincts, loosened her grip. Emma immediately threw her arms around Rex's neck, pressing her face into his fur. "Good boy," Emma said clearly. Rex is a good boy, he found me, he's my friend. Rex stood perfectly still, his tail wagging gently, accepting the little girl's embrace with the same patience he'd shown in the dark woods. Sarah Carter reached out with a trembling hand and touched the dog's head. "Thank you," she whispered to Rex. Then she looked at Morrison, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for bringing my baby home." Paramedics rushed forward with their equipment, but the scene before them was unlike any rescue they'd witnessed. Emma Carter sat on the ground, one arm around her mother's neck and the other wrapped firmly around a police dog's collar, refusing to let go of either. Her small body formed a bridge between the two beings who represented her safety and salvation. "Emma, sweetie, we need to check you over," said paramedic Linda Chen, kneeling down with her medical bag. She was a veteran of 15 years, had seen countless emergencies, but the sight of this tiny, dirt-covered child clinging to a German shepherd made her throat tighten with emotion. Emma's head whipped toward Linda, her eyes going wide with fresh fear. She pressed harder against Rex, burying half her face in his fur. "No, don't take me away from Rex." Sarah Carter stroked her daughter's hair with shaking hands. "Baby, they just want to make sure you're okay. They're not going to take you away." "Rex stays," Emma insisted, her voice rising to near hysteria. "Rex has to stay with me." Officer Morrison, still catching his breath from the grueling rescue, stepped forward. "It's okay, Emma. Rex can stay right here. He's not going anywhere." Linda exchanged a glance with her partner, Marcus Webb. They'd need to examine Emma for injuries, check her vitals, assess for hypothermia and shock. But clearly, separating this child from the dog would only traumatize her further. "Okay, honey," Linda said gently. "Rex can stay. We're just going to look at you while you hold on to your friend. Is that all right?" Emma nodded slightly, though she kept her eyes locked on Rex. The dog, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, remained perfectly motionless, allowing the little girl to maintain her grip on his collar. Marcus began pulling out equipment, a blood pressure cuff, a thermometer, gauze, and antiseptic. Linda carefully examined Emma's arms and legs, noting the numerous scratches and scrapes covering her skin. Some were superficial, but a few were deeper, caked with dried blood and dirt. "Emma, I'm going to clean these cuts, okay? It might sting a little bit," Linda warned. The moment the antiseptic touched Emma's skin, she cried out. But instead of pulling away, she buried her face deeper into Rex's fur. Good boy," she whispered, the mantra that had saved her in the woods now comforting her through this new ordeal. Rex turned his head slightly, giving Emma's cheek a gentle lick. The gesture was so tender, so perfectly timed, that several onlookers gasped. Sarah Carter clutched her husband's hand, watching in amazement as the police dog provided comfort her daughter wouldn't accept from any human except her parents. "Temperature is 94.8 degrees, Marcus announced quietly to Linda. "She's hypothermic, but not severely. Blood pressure is 105/68, elevated but expected given the stress. Heart rate is 132. "We need to get her to the hospital," Linda said, looking at Sarah and David. "She needs a full examination, warming treatment, and those cuts need proper cleaning and possibly stitches." "No," Emma's scream cut through the night air. "No hospital, I want to stay with Rex." Sarah pulled Emma closer, her own tears flowing freely. "Sweetheart, we have to go. You're hurt, and the doctors need to help you feel better." "But Rex," Emma sobbed, her small body shaking with fresh tears. "I need Rex. Please, Mommy, Rex has to come." Morrison knelt down beside the family, his heart breaking at the desperation in Emma's voice. In 3 years of working with Rex, he'd never seen anything like this. The dog and child had formed a bond in minutes that most people didn't form in years. "Emma, look at me," Morrison said softly. The little girl turned her tear-stained face toward him. "Rex is a working police dog. He has a very important job. He can't come to the hospital with you." Emma's face crumpled and she began sobbing harder, clutching Rex with renewed desperation. No, no, no. Rex saved me. He found me. He's my friend. I know he is, Morrison continued, his voice gentle but firm. And Rex thinks you're very brave. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take Rex home and give him a big dinner and let him rest. And then in a few days when you're feeling better, Rex and I will come visit you. Would you like that? Emma looked at Morrison with those big, terrified eyes. Promise. You promise Rex will come see me. I give you my word, Morrison said, and he meant it. Rex wants to visit you. He wants to make sure his friend is okay. When? Emma asked, her voice small and broken. How about in 3 days? That gives you time to rest and get better and gives Rex time to rest too. He worked very hard tonight to find you, Morrison explained. Emma looked at Rex, her lower lip trembling. The dog gazed back at her with those gentle brown eyes and somehow, impossibly, seemed to understand the goodbye happening. Rex leaned forward and licked Emma's face again, from her chin to her forehead, making the little girl giggle despite her tears. Okay, Emma whispered finally, but 3 days you promised. 3 days, Morrison confirmed, holding up 3 fingers. Slowly, reluctantly, Emma released her grip on Rex's collar. Her hand lingered in his fur for a long moment before finally pulling away. Sarah immediately lifted Emma into her arms, holding her tight as the paramedics prepared the stretcher. But as they began to move toward the ambulance, Emma suddenly struggled. "Wait!" she cried out. Everyone froze. Emma wiggled in her mother's arms until Sarah set her down. The 3-year-old, covered in dirt and blood, exhausted beyond measure, walked on unsteady legs back to where Rex sat. The dog waited patiently, his tail wagging slowly. Emma threw her arms around Rex's neck one more time. "Thank you for finding me," she whispered into his fur. "You're the best dog in the whole world. You're my hero." Rex, that remarkable police dog who had tracked criminals and found missing persons and served his community with unwavering dedication, rested his head against the small child's shoulder. If a dog could hug back, that's what Rex was doing. "Good boy," Emma said one more time, pulling back to look into Rex's eyes. "The goodest boy ever." Morrison felt his eyes burning with unshed tears. Around him, hardened police officers, firefighters, and searchers were openly weeping. Even the paramedics had to look away to compose themselves. Sarah Carter approached Morrison as David lifted Emma. "Officer Morrison," she said, her voice breaking, "I don't know how to thank you. You and Rex. You brought my baby home." "Just doing our job, ma'am," Morrison replied, though his voice was rough with emotion. "No," Sarah said firmly, reaching out to shake his hand, then thinking better of it and pulling him into a hug. "You did so much more than that. You gave me back my world. And that dog," she looked at Rex with wonder. "That dog gave my daughter hope when she had none. He made her feel safe when she was terrified. That's not just a job, that's a miracle." She released Morrison and bent down to Rex, cupping the dog's face in her hands. "Thank you, Rex. Thank you for protecting my baby girl." She kissed the top of his head, tears dripping onto his fur. Rex's tail wagged, accepting her gratitude with dignified grace. As the ambulance pulled away, its lights flashing but sirens silent, Emma pressed her face against the window. Morrison could see her small hand waving, could see her mouth forming words, probably "bye, Rex" or "good boy." He waved back, and beside him, Rex sat at attention, watching the ambulance disappear down the long driveway. "You did good tonight, partner," Morrison said quietly, running his hand over Rex's head. "You did real good." Rex looked up at him and barked once, short and decisive. The sound seemed to say, "Just doing my job." But both Morrison and Rex knew it had been so much more than that. In the darkest moment of a little girl's life, a dog had shown her that she wasn't alone. That help was coming, that she was safe. And that simple act of compassion, that willingness to be gentle when gentleness was needed, had saved Emma Carter's life just as surely as finding her had. The bond forged in those dark woods would last a lifetime, Morrison was certain of it. 3 days, Morrison said to Rex as they walked back to their patrol car. We promised her 3 days. We better not forget. Rex barked again, and Morrison smiled. There was no way either of them would forget. The emergency room at Greenfield Memorial Hospital was a flurry of activity when the ambulance carrying Emma Carter arrived. Dr. Patricia Martinez, a pediatric specialist with 20 years of experience, was waiting at the entrance. She'd been briefed on the case: 3-year-old, lost in the woods for over 3 hours, possible hypothermia, multiple lacerations, and severe psychological trauma. What Dr. Martinez wasn't prepared for was the level of that trauma. The moment the paramedics tried to move Emma from her mother's arms to the examination table, the little girl began screaming. Not the ordinary crying of a frightened child, but primal shrieks of absolute terror that echoed through the emergency department and made every staff member's blood run cold. "No, no, I want Rex. Where's Rex?" Emma thrashed in Sarah's arms, her small face red and contorted with panic. "Who's Rex?" Dr. Martinez asked quickly, moving to help calm the child. "The police dog that found her," Sarah explained, her voice breaking as she tried to soothe her daughter. "She bonded with him in the woods. She won't. She can't seem to let go of that connection." Emma's cries continued, drowning out the doctor's attempts to speak calmly to her. "Rex, I need Rex. Mommy, where's the doggie?" It took 45 minutes and a mild sedative before Emma calmed enough for a proper examination. Dr. Martinez worked carefully, documenting 12 lacerations requiring butterfly bandages, numerous superficial scratches, mild hypothermia, and signs of dehydration. Physically, Emma would heal, but the psychological impact was evident in every flinch, every whimper, every time her eyes darted around the room searching for something or someone who wasn't there. "She's going to be okay physically," Dr. Martinez told Sarah and David in the hallway while Emma slept in the examination room. "But emotionally, she's been through a severe trauma. It's not uncommon for children this young to fixate on whatever or whoever made them feel safe during a traumatic event. In Emma's case, that's the dog." "Rex," Sarah said softly. "His name is Rex." "The officer promised to visit in 3 days," David added, running his hands through his hair in exhaustion. "Do you think that will help?" Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Actually, yes. Having that concrete promise, something to look forward to, could be very beneficial for her recovery. Just make sure it happens. Children this age take promises very seriously." They kept Emma overnight for observation. Sarah never left her side, sleeping in a chair pulled close to the hospital bed. Every time Emma woke up, which was frequently, her first words were always the same: "Where's Rex?" And every time, Sarah would gently remind her, "Rex is resting, baby. He worked very hard to find you. Officer Morrison promised he'll come visit in 3 days." 3 days, Emma would repeat, holding up 3 small fingers. "Rex promised." The nightmare started that first night. Emma would wake up screaming, describing the darkness, the scary noises, being lost and alone. But interestingly, the nightmares would end with Rex. "And then the doggy came," she'd say through her tears. "Rex made the scary go away." Sarah called Officer Morrison the next morning. He answered on the second ring. "Officer Morrison, this is Sarah Carter, Emma's mother." "Mrs. Carter, how is she?" Morrison asked immediately, genuine concern in his voice. "Physically, she's going to be fine, but Officer Morrison, she's not doing well emotionally. She keeps asking for Rex. She has nightmares, and the only thing that calms her down is talking about your dog." Sarah's voice cracked. "I know you have a job to do, and I know Rex is a working police dog, but that promise you made to visit, it's the only thing keeping Emma going right now." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Morrison's voice came through, firm and reassuring. "Mrs. Carter, I gave Emma my word. Rex and I will be there in 3 days. You can count on it." "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "Thank you so much." The second day was harder. Emma was released from the hospital, but being home didn't bring the comfort Sarah had hoped for. Emma refused to go near the backyard, wouldn't let her mother out of her sight, and woke up screaming multiple times during the night. The cuts on her arms and legs were healing, but the wounds in her mind were fresh and raw. The only time Emma showed any spark of her old self was when she talked about Rex. She made Sarah tell her the story of the rescue over and over again. "And then Rex crawled to me," Emma would say, her eyes lighting up. "And I said, 'Good boy,' and he wagged his tail. Tell me again, Mommy. Tell me about Rex." Sarah drew pictures with Emma of a little girl and a big dog. Emma insisted on coloring Rex brown and black, getting every detail she could remember exactly right. She drew a police badge on his chest and wrote Rex in wobbly 3-year-old letters above the drawing. "This is for when he visits," Emma explained seriously, "so Rex knows I didn't forget him." On the third day, Emma woke up before dawn. She climbed into her parents' bed and shook Sarah awake. "Mommy, is it today? Is today 3 days?" Sarah checked her phone, 5:47 a.m. "Yes, baby, today is the day Rex comes to visit." Emma's face transformed with pure joy. "Rex is coming today," she bounced on the bed, more animated than she'd been since before the incident. "We have to get ready. We have to make cookies for Rex. Do dogs like cookies, Mommy?" The energy was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Sarah watched her traumatized daughter come back to life at the prospect of seeing the dog who had saved her, and she sent up a silent prayer of thanks for Officer Morrison and his remarkable partner. By 2 p.m., Emma had changed her clothes 3 times, practiced saying "Hi, Rex" in the mirror at least 50 times, and arranged her drawing and several of her stuffed animals in the living room so Rex can meet them. She stationed herself at the front window, her face pressed against the glass, watching for any sign of a police car. "When is he coming, Mommy?" Emma asked for the 100th time. "Soon, sweetheart. Officer Morrison said he'd come this afternoon," Sarah replied, checking her own watch anxiously. Morrison had texted that morning confirming 3 p.m. It was now 2:47. At 2:55 p.m., Emma gasped, "A police car! Mommy, it's a police car!" Sarah's heart leaped. She looked out the window and saw Officer Morrison's patrol car pulling into their driveway. Emma was jumping up and down, squealing with excitement. All traces of the traumatized child from the past 3 days temporarily vanished. The doorbell rang, and Emma practically vibrated with anticipation as Sarah opened the door. There stood Officer Morrison in his uniform, a gentle smile on his face, and beside him, sitting at perfect attention with his tail wagging, was Rex. "Rex!" Emma's scream of joy was deafening. She launched herself forward, and Rex, well-trained, disciplined police dog that he was, broke position immediately. He met Emma halfway, his tail wagging furiously, and the little girl threw her arms around his neck. "Good boy, good boy, good boy," Emma cried, her face buried in Rex's fur, her whole body shaking, not with fear this time, but with pure, unbridled happiness. You came back like you promised." Rex, that gentle giant, stood perfectly still and let Emma hug him as tight as she could. His tail never stopped wagging. He licked her face, her hands, her hair, and Emma giggled. The first real laugh Sarah had heard from her daughter in 3 days. Morrison's eyes met Sarah's over Emma's head. The officer's eyes were suspiciously bright, and Sarah realized she was crying too. Happy tears this time. "Thank you for coming," Sarah managed to say. Morrison nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He watched Emma and Rex, watched the healing happening right before his eyes, and knew that he and his partner had done more than just find a lost child in the woods. They'd given her hope. They'd given her a hero. They'd given her someone to believe in when she had nothing else. "Rex," Morrison said softly, "it looks like you made a friend for life, partner." Rex barked once in response, and Emma hugged him even tighter, her laughter filling the Carter home with a sound that had been absent for far too long. The healing, Morrison realized, was only just beginning. Officer Jake Morrison had witnessed many emotional moments in his career, but watching Emma Carter's reunion with Rex was something he knew he'd remember for the rest of his life. The little girl simply couldn't let go of the dog, and Rex, for his part, seemed content to stand there indefinitely, accepting every hug, every kiss, every whispered good boy with patient grace. "Emma, sweetheart, maybe we should let Rex come inside," Sarah suggested gently, wiping tears from her own eyes. Emma pulled back just enough to look at Rex with concern. "Are you tired, Rex? Do you need water? Mommy, Rex needs water." Morrison smiled. "That's very thoughtful, Emma. Rex would probably like some water." Emma grabbed Rex's collar, the same way she had in the woods, and led him into the house like she'd been handling police dogs her entire life. Rex walked beside her perfectly, matching his pace to her small steps, and Morrison followed, shaking David Carter's hand at the door. "Officer Morrison, I don't know how to express our gratitude," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "Seeing Emma smile like that is all the thanks I need," Morrison replied honestly. Inside, the scene was remarkable. Emma had transformed from the traumatized child Sarah had described on the phone into an animated, joyful little girl. She'd spread a blanket on the living room floor and was showing Rex her stuffed animals one by one. "This is Mr. Bunny, he's my favorite. And this is Princess Bear, and this is Elephant. His name is just Elephant because I couldn't think of a better name," Emma explained seriously to Rex, who sat attentively as if genuinely interested in each toy. "But none of them are as brave as you, Rex. You're the bravest." Morrison sat on the couch next to Sarah, watching the interaction with professional interest and personal wonder. "How has she been?" he asked quietly. Sarah's face clouded. "Nightmares every night. She won't go in the backyard. She panics if I leave her sight for more than a minute. The doctor said it's normal traumatic response. But this," she gestured to Emma, who was now attempting to put a doll's hat on Rex's head, "this is the first time since that night that she seems like herself." "Rex," Emma called out suddenly, "Officer Morrison, look what I made for you." She ran to the coffee table and retrieved the drawing she'd colored, the picture of a little girl and a big dog. She presented it to Morrison with both hands, like it was the most valuable treasure in the world. "This is you and me, Rex," Emma explained, pointing to the figures. "See, I made you have a badge because you're a police dog, and that's me saying good boy. Do you like it?" Morrison took the drawing carefully. "Emma, this is the best drawing I've ever seen. Can I keep it?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "It's for you and Rex, so you remember me." "We could never forget you," Morrison said, and he meant it. He folded the drawing carefully and placed it in his shirt pocket, right over his heart. For the next hour, Morrison and Sarah watched as Emma and Rex formed a bond that transcended the typical child-pet relationship. Emma told Rex everything, about her nightmares, about how scared she'd been, about how she'd gotten lost chasing a butterfly. Rex listened to it all, his brown eyes never leaving her face, occasionally offering a gentle lick when Emma's voice wavered. "I was so scared in the dark," Emma confided, sitting cross-legged in front of Rex. "I called for Mommy and Daddy, but nobody came. I thought I'd be lost forever." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But then you found me. You weren't scary like I thought. You were nice. You let me hug you." Rex leaned forward and rested his head on Emma's lap. The gesture was so perfectly timed, so compassionate, that Sarah had to leave the room for a moment to compose herself. Emma stroked Rex's head rhythmically. "I have bad dreams now," she told the dog, "about being lost, but in my dreams you always come. You always find me, so the bad dreams don't stay bad." Morrison felt his throat tighten. He'd trained Rex for 3 years, worked hundreds of calls with him, but he'd never fully appreciated the depth of healing a dog could provide. Rex wasn't just a tool for law enforcement. He was a comfort, a protector, a bridge between fear and safety. Emma, Morrison said gently, would you like to know a secret about Rex? Emma's eyes went wide. Yes, tell me. Sometimes, when Rex and I are out working, and things get a little scary for me, I remember that Rex is there. And just knowing he's with me makes me feel braver. Kind of like how Rex makes you feel safer. Emma considered this seriously. So you and me both need Rex. Exactly, Morrison confirmed. Rex is good at making people feel brave. Emma threw her arms around Rex's neck again. You're the best dog in the whole entire world, Rex. The whole entire world forever and ever. David had been recording some of this on his phone, and now he approached Morrison with an idea. Officer Morrison, I know Rex is a working dog and has responsibilities, but would it be possible for you to visit again? I think Emma would benefit from it tremendously. Morrison looked at Emma, who had overheard and was now staring at him with hopeful eyes that could melt steel. Can you come back? She asked. Please. Rex doesn't have to stay forever, just sometimes. Morrison had broken protocol by promising this first visit. Continuing to bring Rex back would be even more irregular. But looking at Emma's face, thinking about her nightmares and her trauma, he couldn't imagine saying no. How about this? Morrison proposed. Rex and I will come visit once a week for a while, just until you're feeling completely better. Would that help? Emma nodded so vigorously her whole body shook. Yes, once a week, every week. But Emma, Morrison added gently, you have to promise me something too. You have to work on being brave even when Rex isn't here. You have to try to go back in the backyard, try to sleep through the night, try to let Mommy leave the room sometimes. Can you do that? Emma looked uncertain, but then she looked at Rex. Will you be proud of me if I'm brave? Morrison smiled. Rex and I will be very proud of you. The bravest people are the ones who are scared but do things anyway. Like how you were scared in the woods but you still said good boy to Rex even though you didn't know him. Emma thought about this. Okay, I'll try to be brave because Rex would want me to be brave. That's my girl, Morrison said. As the afternoon turned to evening, Morrison knew he needed to get back to work. Rex had been off duty for this visit, but they still had responsibilities. Emma's face fell when Morrison stood up. Do you have to go? She asked, her voice small. Yes, sweetheart. But remember, next week, same time, Rex and I will be back, Morrison assured her. Emma walked Morrison and Rex to the door, holding Rex's collar the entire way. At the doorway, she knelt down and looked Rex directly in the eyes. Thank you for finding me, she whispered. Thank you for being my friend. I love you, Rex. Rex licked her face one more time, his tail wagging, and Emma giggled through her tears. Morrison and Rex walked back to the patrol car, and Morrison turned to see Emma pressed against the window, waving frantically. He waved back, and Rex even turned and barked once, making Emma's face light up with joy. As they drove away, Morrison reached over and scratched Rex behind the ears. You know what, partner? I think we just found the most important case we'll ever work on. Rex barked in agreement, and Morrison smiled. They'd be back next week, and the week after that, for as long as Emma needed them. Because that's what heroes did. They showed up. 6 months had passed since that terrifying August night when Emma Carter disappeared into the Tennessee woods. Now, on a crisp February morning, Officer Jake Morrison pulled up to Greenfield Elementary School with Rex sitting in the passenger seat. Today was special. Emma had asked Morrison and Rex to come to her class for show and tell. The transformation in Emma had been remarkable. True to his word, Morrison had visited every Sunday for the first 3 months. Each visit brought visible progress. The nightmares became less frequent. Emma ventured back into the yard, first with Rex by her side, then eventually on her own. The constant fear that had shadowed her began to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence that amazed everyone who knew her story. You ready for this, partner? Morrison asked Rex as they walked toward the school entrance. Rex's tail wagged enthusiastically. Over the past 6 months, the dog had become somewhat of a local celebrity. The story of Emma's rescue had spread through Greenfield and into neighboring counties, inspiring articles in regional newspapers and even a segment on the local news. Principal Margaret Foster greeted them in the hallway. "Officer Morrison, Rex, we're so honored to have you here. Emma has been talking about this day nonstop for 2 weeks." She leaned down to pet Rex. "This dog is a hero in every sense of the word." Emma's kindergarten classroom erupted in excited whispers when Morrison and Rex entered. 25-5 and 6-year-olds stared wide-eyed at the impressive German Shepherd in his official K9 vest. But Morrison only had eyes for Emma, who sat in the front row wearing a bright yellow dress covered in, fittingly, butterflies. The moment Emma saw Rex, her face exploded with joy. "Rex!" she shouted, forgetting all classroom rules. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, smiled indulgently as Emma rushed forward and threw her arms around the dog's neck. "Good boy," Emma said, those 2 words she'd said hundreds of times now, but which never failed to make Morrison's chest tighten with emotion. "You came. I told everyone you'd come." "Emma promised us you were a real hero," said a little boy named Tyler from the back row. "Is that true?" Morrison smiled. "Rex is definitely a hero, but today I think Emma should tell you the story, if that's okay with you, Emma." Emma looked nervous for just a moment, but then she looked at Rex, and that familiar confidence returned. She stood in front of her classmates, one hand resting on Rex's head, and began to speak. "Last summer I got lost in the woods," Emma started, her voice clear and steady. "I was chasing a butterfly and I went too far. I couldn't find my way home. It got dark and I was really, really scared." The classroom was silent, every child transfixed by Emma's story. "I was crying because I wanted my mommy and daddy, and then I heard something coming through the trees. I saw a big light and a big dog and I was scared because I didn't know them." Emma paused, stroking Rex's fur. "Officer Morrison tried to help me, but I was too scared to let him. But then Rex did something special." "What did he do?" asked a little girl named Sophie. Emma's face softened with the memory. "He got down real low and crawled to me really slow and gentle. He put his head down like this," she demonstrated, lowering her head to her chest, "and he looked at me with kind eyes. And I knew he was a good boy, so I told him that. I said, 'Good boy,' and Rex wagged his tail, and I wasn't scared anymore." Morrison watched Emma tell her story with growing pride. 6 months ago, this child had been so traumatized she couldn't sleep through the night. Now she stood before her peers, sharing her experience with courage and clarity. "Rex let me hug him, even though I was dirty and crying," Emma continued. "And then Officer Morrison carried me home, and Rex walked right next to us the whole way. When I saw my mommy and daddy, I was so happy. But I was also sad because I had to say goodbye to Rex." "But you see him now," Tyler pointed out. Emma beamed. "Yes, because Officer Morrison promised to visit me, and he kept his promise. Rex came to see me every week for a long time, and every time I had a bad dream or felt scared, I would think about Rex and I would feel brave again." Mrs. Patterson dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Even Principal Foster, watching from the doorway, was visibly moved. Morrison stepped forward. "Would you guys like to learn about what Rex does as a police dog?" A chorus of yes filled the classroom. For the next 30 minutes, Morrison demonstrated Rex's training. The children watched in amazement as Rex followed commands, demonstrated his tracking abilities, and showed his gentle side by allowing each child to carefully pet him. But throughout it all, Rex kept glancing back at Emma, and Emma kept smiling at him. A silent conversation between 2 friends who'd been through something extraordinary together. At the end of the presentation, a shy boy named Marcus raised his hand. "Officer Morrison, my dad says Rex saved Emma's life. Is that true?" Morrison considered the question carefully. "Rex found Emma when she was lost, but I think Emma saved herself too. She was brave enough to trust Rex when she was scared. She said 2 words, "Good boy," and those 2 words changed everything. Those words built a bridge between fear and hope. Emma walked over to Rex and hugged him one more time. Rex taught me that even when you're really scared, there's always someone who cares. You just have to be brave enough to let them help you. The wisdom in those words, coming from a 5-year-old, left the adults in the room speechless. After the presentation, as Morrison and Rex prepared to leave, Emma walked them to the patrol car. Sarah Carter was there, having taken time off work to attend the school visit. "Officer Morrison," Sarah said, "I wanted you to know that our family started a fundraiser for the Greenfield Police K-9 unit. We've raised over $50,000. Morrison's eyes widened. "Mrs. Carter, that's incredible." "It's the least we could do," Sarah replied. "Because of Rex, because of you, I have my daughter. The community wants to make sure other families have that same chance." Emma tugged on Morrison's sleeve. "And guess what? When I grow up, I want to work with dogs like you do. I want to help people like Rex helped me." Morrison knelt down to Emma's level. "You know what, Emma? I think you'd be amazing at that. You already know the most important thing, that sometimes the smallest gesture can make the biggest difference." "Like saying good boy?" Emma asked. "Exactly like that," Morrison confirmed. Emma threw her arms around Morrison's neck, then around Rex. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for teaching me to be brave." As Morrison drove away, he watched in his rearview mirror as Emma waved enthusiastically, her yellow butterfly dress fluttering in the breeze. She was running now, chasing after the car with pure joy on her face, the same little girl who'd once been too terrified to step outside. Morrison reached over and scratched Rex behind the ears. "You know, partner, we've solved a lot of cases together, but I think this one is going to be the one that matters most." Rex barked once, his tail wagging. That evening, Morrison returned to the police station and went to his locker. Inside, carefully preserved in a frame, was the drawing Emma had made him 6 months ago, a little girl and a big dog, with the words "Good boy" written in wobbly letters across the top. Chief Williams stopped by Morrison's desk. "I heard the school visit went well." "Better than well, Chief. Emma told her story like a champion. That kid is going to be just fine." The chief nodded thoughtfully. "You know, Morrison, when I approved this arrangement, you visiting Emma every week, I wasn't sure it was the right call. Police dogs have protocols, procedures, but watching what's happened with that little girl, I was wrong to doubt it. You and Rex did more than find her. You helped her heal." Morrison looked at Rex, who was resting peacefully in the corner of the office. "Rex did the hard part, Chief. All I did was follow his lead." That night, Morrison shared Emma's story at a community meeting about expanding the K-9 program. He told them about the 2 words that had changed everything. He told them about a terrified child who found courage through a gentle dog. He told them about weekly visits and gradual healing, and a little girl who now wanted to help others the way she'd been helped. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. But Morrison wasn't thinking about the recognition. He was thinking about Emma, about Rex, about the unexpected bond that had formed in the darkest moment and had become a source of light for an entire community. 2 words, "Good boy." No one had expected that a 3-year-old's simple words to a police dog would create such a profound impact. But those words had done more than calm a frightened child. They'd bridged the gap between fear and trust, between trauma and healing, between despair and hope. And in doing so, they'd reminded everyone in Greenfield that sometimes the most powerful moments in life come from the simplest acts of kindness and connection. Emma Carter was going to be just fine. She had Rex in her heart, courage in her spirit, and 2 words that would remind her forever that she was never truly alone. "Good boy," she'd said in her darkest hour. And good boy Rex had been, not just a hero, but a friend, a healer, and a reminder that sometimes salvation comes on four paws and a wagging tail. The end.